we had cows, but, no money. I was a human scarecrow for 6 weeks. That was all right.
What? You don't know who the tight arse is.
Yeah.
It's probably you.
Like, I don't collect runners to look at them.
Yeah.
I'm sociable enough for an introvert. No, you should pay me because you owe me.
It is a dismal Monday afternoon
That's right.
in Dublin, and there's probably no better time to do a forensic of your personal finances.
If I had to pick a moment, this is the moment I would be, the time of the week I'd be most comfortable.
Yes,
with this. I'm not saying, it's very comfortable, but I'm most comfortable out of any of the sessions. This would be the one, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you like talking about money, or are you like the rest of Irish people and you would run a million miles away from it?
Well, because I'm self-employed, you can't not talk about it, because you either talk about it in terms of how much is the fee for X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
Have I been paid yet? Is it VAT or not VAT? And then taxes. You're so much more hands-on with everything. Like, I'm much more, I have to be. Like, I can't be blithe about it. So it's sort of, it's part of the job. It's part of me as well. I, grew up thrifty.
Okay.
Grew up on a small farm where we had cows, but no money. So that kind of thing. So yeah, I've always been aware. Hopefully not a tight arse, but you never know. You never know by whose standards you are. So
is it like in poker? Like if you look around the table and you don't know who the tight arse is.
Yeah,
it's probably you.
Yeah, I suppose. But I always try to be what's the word? At least penny foolish. You know the way they say penny wise and pound foolish. I would like to be penny foolish so that you don't get caught being, anal about the small things. But
Yeah. So you're talking there about being hands-on, and you do have to be hands-on when you're freelance or you're an independent contractor. But that is a muscle that you'd have to develop. Or were you able to go in straight away and stand your ground and say, "Where's my money? It's 30 days," or?
I mean, the extent to which I stand my ground, I suppose I stand my ground while typing out the sentence, "Hey, just wondering if you got my last email, or if for the first time in 25 years of email, the email suddenly didn't arrive because, a server went missing in between. Hey, did you get my text?" Like that literally never, people got your text, like.
Yeah.
Remember the early days of phones, there was a thing called like dropped calls and dropped texts, and you could legitimately say, "Hey, did you get that thing I just sent you?" There would have been some air gap, but hey, just wondering if that email, went to spam, even though we've been emailing back and forth for 3 years.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of politeness. There's a bit of, I kind of need it, like,
yeah,
as if that is the reason, but it's also, no, you should pay me because you owe me. Like, but I'm pretty, what's the word? Nudgy polite.
Nudge is also a good word that you can kind of throw in. Just giving you a gentle nudge.
I saw myself,
please give me my money,
typing the word nudge recently, and it just...
Did it trigger you?
Yeah. Well, no, I was like... Am I a person who writes the word nudge now in an email?
I've become a nudger.
A nudge, yeah. Well, what I'm not going to do is end emails with the word best. I'm not going to do that. So that's my red line. I doesn't mean anything to me. So, like, is it kind regards? Is it best regards?
Yeah.
Is it regards? Is it just my name? Best? Right. Who's doing their best here?
Yeah. So you mentioned there you grew up on a farm. I guess one or both parents was a little bit thrifty then. Is that where it came from?
Yeah, it's all sides of the family grew up on small holdings of land or, in a thrifty time. So there was on a farm, there is not cash for things that
sure.
don't relate to the farm, because you're managing, you need to have enough, like the big expenses are for the farm, so the kind of the arguments then about consumer stuff always have to take precedent behind the business. But we didn't think of it as a business, but it is a business that happens to sit in the house
Sure.
and the area outside the house. So I think, yeah, there was plenty of thrift there, apart from, say, you know, at a wedding where suddenly I'd see my father hold a £50 note. I'd never literally seen it in his hand before, but like, I'd be sure he didn't want to be, like, that was just there to buy a round and then get all of that change back and then just kind of step away from the scene. It always reminded me of when the pup came out. Remember the COVID dole came out?
Yeah.
And it was so handed over with like no questions asked. It felt like your father at a wedding. Like when you got your 350 quid, it's like, you mean I just like say my name and that I need it and you're going to give me this? And they were like, yeah, look, we don't have time to ask questions. And I'm like, that's like seeing your father at a wedding going, I better buy a round for these in case anyone thinks I'm Maine.
Yeah. So today, I guess you're a saver as opposed to like a natural born spender?
Yeah, I think so. I'm always kind of thinking about like the overriding, if to do a psychological assessment, I always believe it being self-employment or jobs turning up could end any minute. So if that happened, would I be okay until the dust cleared and the sun shone again kind of thing. So yeah, that's sort of in my mind, and it doesn't take over life. It's just a sort of I start from that position and then, you know, then you kind of spend on what you need.
Sure.
But also I don't like waste of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't need stuff as a measure of happiness. I mean, I like nice things, but only if they have utility. If they make something easier or more comfortable or more enjoyable, but not like I don't collect runners to look at them. Be like, well, I only have 2 feet. So, like I start from the saving point of view, and then I hate too much stuff, and we have a small house, and so it all adds up to, you know, not a whole lot of unnecessary spending. I'm great crack, honestly. Like, buy you a pint, no bother. I just won't buy you any more runners. You have enough.
Any chance of a loan of a tenner?
Well, I'd have to ask what it was for. No, I'll definitely spring to a tenner, especially to get a You and Your Money podcast off the ground,
or light beverage.
Even though it's for a rival podcasting firm. But anyway,
thank you, Colm.
Yeah.
Tell me your first job.
Definitely on the farm.
Yeah.
And it would have been either on the farm or in the house. Can't remember the exact time. Definitely cutting thistles, or probably cutting thistles or pulling ragwort, and it would have been for, you know, a pound would have been or two would have been thrown my way for it, but it wasn't necessarily a contracted job for my father. The first few, because I would have been limited use. So if we were cutting thistles, my father would have the scythe. I don't know if people are familiar with the scythe. It's a two-handled. It's like the AK-47 of weed cutting. A two-handled implement with a big curved blade. And the next step down then is the slasher, which is a long-handled thing, curved. Like, all of these things look like they are useful in
medieval times.
Huge fights between neighbouring parishes. But I, as the youngest and the smallest, wasn't tall enough for the slash hook. So I had the hedge clippers, which is the worst thing. You can only cut 1 or 2 thistles at a time with that. But, you know, it's good for, what are these? I don't have many more pectorals. Yeah. I probably had better pecs when I was 5 or 6. And then indoors, our painting gates was another one. Our scraping the old paint off gates was the less glamorous version of the glitzy painting gates. So you can't paint gates until you get the old paint, the loose paint off first. So obviously nobody wanted to do that, but that had to be done as well. Whitewashing walls.
Wow.
And then indoors, painting for the station. So it's definitely a Cork thing. Mass in the house every 7 years. Would go from house to house in a different parish, in a given townland. You would have, each house would take turns to have the station. And it was like 7 years, like maybe in Catholic terms, to bless the house, but in neighbourly terms, sort of a morning hoolie in the house after Mass with no drink, but just lots of sandwiches, but also an opportunity to paint the inside of the house.
So it's like a medal. Like, is that the vibe, or?
Well, it was. I mean, yeah. Well, we didn't all help each other do our toilet houses. No, it it'd be like a mehel if you tidied up the field before inviting everybody in to do the hay.
Yeah.
No, it was once every 7 years. Everybody, like it's died off now, but there was about 3 or 4 in our house in my lifetime, and I could remember what lino and what wall colour corresponded to what year, because it was usually done for the station. So that lino, that chair's from 1985, that wall has been that colour since 1992, 1999. Can't remember exactly what was done in 1999, but some jobs were done in 1999. You'd borrow like chairs from other people.
Yeah.
And then you might have 30 or 40 people. And it's so weird in a house where we don't really do visitors to have a load of people in your house. It's the most exciting thing. And you get a day off school. And
fantastic.
Yeah. I miss those. They were great crack. Yeah.
So you're a grafter. True.
I think so. Yeah, I'm a grafter. Well, I've put in the time, but my focus is terrible. And I spend too much time getting distracted. But I won't not do it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm very inefficient.
Yeah.
But I graft by sitting there until it gets done. Kind of thing, you know.
And you're a father of 2 girls.
That's right, yeah.
What age are they?
They are from, within the next while, it'll be 8 and 9. We're currently 7 and 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it important for you to cultivate that graft in them, that like with chores around the house and whatnot?
I mean, I think, and this is what works for me as a father in our family, and is not advice to anyone else's family, and is not relevant. You know, you also have to preface everything every time you talk about children. Totally. It's like, I'm not saying anything about your family, okay? I swear. You're doing amazing, right? But gee, the state of the... No. So for me, I think that for them to have the ability to get up and do a thing, and if it's just chores around the house or any kind of enterprise or self-starting, whether it's for money or just the crack, but often like doing a bit of work around the house is a sort of self-starting, and you know, they do a thing, they see the benefit of it, and they get to bask in the glory, and they get some praise. You know, it's not the worst. And then, you know, there might be the odd few bobs thrown their way for it, but it just gives them that sense of control over something, and I think it's just good for the mind to get up and do stuff, you know. Gets them off the screens, Katie.
I'm with you. I'm not Protestant, but I have that kind of ethic in me where I like work as its own reward. I think it's good. I think
I mean, it's a slippery slope where we start there, but But they like doing stuff. I mean, what you don't want them to have is a sense of entitlement. Everything else is fine, but a sense of I'm entitled to this because of who I am or whatever. Like, no, they're not gonna have that. Also, we're not anyone, so they're not gonna. There's no basis for any sense of entitlement. But I think just getting up and doing something for yourself is a good. I'm sure everybody does. I'm sure all parents do it.
Yeah.
Especially me. I'm the best.
What about pocket money? You mentioned a few bob there. Do they get a set amount of
we
pocket
drift
money?
we drift in and out of it. They get birthday money, and they've nothing to spend it on yet. They haven't quite got to the stage where they have the full spending autonomy. Like, they're not going off into town by themselves. So stuff is there. We kind of say, right, we don't have room for that, or you get new plastic shite. It's bad for the environment. You can have stuff. They like to go to charity shops because it's easier to say yes.
Yeah.
You can get something like, you know, whether it's clothes or a toy or whatever, and you just feel like, yeah, that's fine. You know, there isn't a lot of packaging. It's cheap, doing some good, and those are where we have, like, these are the yeses we can say. And it takes the pressure off when you go to Smith's, and it's like, God, I'm panicking because there's so much. You know, you go to a toy shop and it's the tallest shop.
Yeah.
You know, like most shops are yay high, but toy shops seem to go up in like a kind of a Willy Wonka level of height.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming, and it's all so, like, you know, there's the world's smartest people who could have gone on to discover a cure for cancer have decided after college to go and work for Evil Bastard Incorporated to try and get children to want things they had no idea they wanted.
Yeah.
No offense to anyone working in toy marketing. Like, you know, as I say, you do you. I wouldn't in any way say that you're an evil bastard or anything.
But it is incredible because I remember being a kid, like you're sitting right in front of the TV screen. Maybe this is our upbringing. Like you're cross-legged, like you're 2 inches from the TV screen, and the ads are on, and the ads were a feature.
Yeah.
I was just, I'm getting that. Like, and then Bagsying the ads.
Well, we're lucky in a way that streaming has its own issues, but they were reared without ads. So now they see ads as a novelty, and they just watch them kind of as entertainment.
Yeah.
And don't appear to, like, be hoodwinked by them. Do you know what I mean? Like, they look... So for them, do you know what it's like? If you don't eat... do you remember, peas in a tin, right? Mm-hmm. So I used to eat them, like, I'd eat them for breakfast, right? I'd eat them with a spoon out of the tin. And then for years I didn't eat them, and you get the, swanky peas. So, growing up, there's 2 types of peas. There's those peas, and then the marrowfat peas, which I think were sent to kind of as punishment. But then when the revolution in frozen food and getting stuff from the farm... So marrowfat peas are dry, like husks or whatever, and then they have to be steeped and cooked, and they taste like shite. But then there's the revolution in transport and refrigeration, which meant that the peas that are on the farm are the same sweet, delicious peas that you eat, right? But very little added. And then you go back to eating mushy peas, and you're like, oh my, it's like getting Club Orange. Like, my brain is fried by the sweetness of it.
Yes.
So when they watch ads, they can see the nonsense in the ad because they're not used to it. Do you know what I mean? They're not used to being marketed at in that way. So they wouldn't have seen ads until, because we didn't have a telly until a couple of years ago. So all of most of their life was watching Netflix or whatever on a computer.
Yes.
So they saw very few ads, and now they look at ads and they're like, oh, that's a funny ad, but I have no desire to buy the thing.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I could be completely proved wrong. I'm sure as they get into tweens, they'll have loads of ads telling them to be ashamed of their bodies or something. But for the moment, we're in that golden era where they're just like, this ad means nothing to me.
I wonder, is there a bit of like monkey see, monkey does, though? Because you mentioned there that you aren't in the thrall of stuff. Because, like, surely kids pick up on that as well. Like, if you got a dad who's just like the latest consumer objects, and
maybe, but also like dad could be lame as well. Like, they've got friends. But like we all because we're all in the city or in inner suburbs. Nobody's got a big house, so nobody has room, and like, so we're not buying big stuff.
Sure.
Because there isn't room. And I always see people building huge houses. I'm like, you're just spending loads of money on giant tiles, and then you're going to have to put something on the tile. And then somebody will say, I want to be able to drive a miniature Formula One car around the hall. Yeah. Because there's room. And then you'll find it harder to say no. It's like, why are you building such a big house for? You're only going to have 2 children. Totally. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to run a B&B. Like, there are enough B's and B's. Save the material for somebody else's house.
Becomes a full-time job.
I say that now, but if this goes viral and takes off, I'm gonna no, but I'll build it out of living rock anyway. I'll carve it into the inside. It's different.
What about your worst ever job? You mentioned your first there, but what was your worst ever?
I remember there was a transition year work experience job, which, do you know when you ask the job of somebody and they give it to you as a favour, but then they also have to call in a favour. Their position to offer you a favour isn't great. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of like, I don't really know if anybody wants me here. So I was doing a week it was in a factory, and it involved, this isn't it, but imagine my job was do you remember, in dial-up, when you'd plug the dial-up internet, you'd plug the thing into your computer, and there was a wire, and there was kind of a click thing. And so before that noise, and you plugged it in. So imagine that the job was just a week of attaching the little plastic thing to a wire. It wasn't exactly that, but it was that kind of thing, right? With like no context. Like, it's a transition year job, so what would I expect? But it was, for some reason, the dullest, and there was no sense of like, oh, you've got this done and now we'll give you a go at something else. No, that was it for the week. And And I'd prefer to do that outdoors if it was cutting weeds, because you're out,
Yes.
you're out, sorry, cutting weeds, I mean destroying biodiversity.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely that. I was a human scarecrow for 6 weeks. That was all right.
What?
That was okay because I was reading books and outdoors. So that was fun. Literally worked like scaring pigeons from a field of
For
6
real?
fields. Yeah.
I thought you were kidding.
No. Six fields of cauliflower. And
Stop.
Yeah.
What?
That was fun. I got to read lots of books, and then I would go out and do my rounds, and then kind of cycle around the edge of the fields and scare the pigeons and stop them getting settled, and save the crops.
Whoa.
Yeah, because they were taking no notice of the banger, the gas banger you'd see in the corner of a field of cauliflower or corn or broccoli, and so it sounded like a rifle shot, but the pigeons were like, I know what that is. That's not a rifle. I'm in no danger. They'd obviously evolved to know. So the guy who was who owned the fields, I thought I was getting a job, like a glorious job, going out picking vegetables, but this one was for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I was seen as scarecrow material. You know the way you just know when somebody's got the right stuff.
It.
Yeah.
There's something in the eye.
This is a specialist. Like this is a job for a specialist. So yeah, I was.
This guy's a pro.
Yeah, best tan I ever had. £2 an hour.
Good living.
Right through USA 94. So I used to listen to when Brendan O'Carroll and Jerry was on Jerry Ryan. So they'd have a report from USA 94. I'd be there with my Walkman, going around the fields, scaring pigeons, and
Wow.
that was mindfulness. Now that's where my brain was built. Any bit of concentration I have in my brain now was forged during those times. If it wasn't for that, if I had a phone, then I'd be we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be over there huddled in the corner on the phone.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And how did you get into comedy, or when did you know comedy was for you?
Well, I was always, I always kind of could tell a story. Like if I was telling somebody something funny that happened, it struck me that I knew how to tell that story in a way that had a beginning, middle, and end, and people laughed. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't start with, oh my God, this is the funniest thing ever. Wait till I tell you now. And, where was I? Like, it was I'd start the story and I just executed well, got good laughs for that. And then I'd have some thoughts, but I'd nowhere to put them. And then one hungover Sunday, the kind of Sunday, why did I go out last night? That was a terrible night out, kind of mid Celtic Tiger night out where you're like, why did we go into town and spend that much on pints? And then we queued up for it. And they had, nightclubs existed back then.
Yeah,
and you'd pay to get into them. And then you'd buy twice, you'd pay twice as much for half as good a drink. And then the following day, and it was like, mid-20s, so well able to deal with it body-wise. But just a general, I wonder, would this be the Sunday that I'll Google open mic comedy? So I did, and there was the Halfpenny Bridge Inn had open mic. So I sent an email. That's how you used to do it in my day.
Yeah.
You would send an email on the internet.
Yeah.
And they replied saying, yeah, you can have a slot in a month. So there was no gatekeeping, just a bit of time, bit of delay, so that if you lost your nerve, you'd plenty of time to think about it. So that was probably a self-selecting group. If they said, I'll have you tomorrow, then they'd be clogging up their lineups with people who weren't really that sure. So yeah, I did 3 gigs without telling anyone.
Okay.
Just that way I could kind of, it would be a bit like, oh, you wouldn't know her, she goes to a different school kind of thing.
Sure.
You get to live a parallel life. And it's so funny, I think now about the fact that the first time I saw evidence of my comedy, as in that I was on a lineup, was on Airtel. So the listings for gig, a little gig that wasn't even on. I don't think there was any entertainment.ie then. So there was less. There weren't that many listings websites.
Yeah.
Look, I could have looked for them, but stuff got published in places I'm sure it was in a paper. You know what I mean as well. But I remember seeing it on Airtel. I got such a thrill out of seeing my name written on the telly.
Amazing.
Admittedly next to share prices from Bloxham stockbrokers. All those Bloxham stockbrokers on Airtel. They did this this fascination. But anyway, so yeah, mid 2000s, and I wasn't terrible. I was mediocre, and but I enjoyed it. And then I did it and worked and did that burnt the candle literally at both ends for a few years.
When you say worked, what did you work as?
I was working as an IT consultant, management consultant, manager, all that kind of stuff, like proper job.
Yeah.
And like a job that would sometimes have 60-hour weeks or more, and then sometimes going into gig at night or travelling to gig at night and being absolutely wrecked. And yeah.
So what was your first paying gig in comedy?
First paying gig, I think it was €15, €30 maybe. I think it was in the Capitol Comedy Club, also in the Halfpenny Bridge Inn, but on a Wednesday night. And I think that was it. It was a small fee, Bob. Very grateful for it. Yeah. I mean, I did a gig where I got a jumper as payment.
Sure.
I've done loads of free gigs for charities. Oh my God. But I suppose you have to. Yeah. And then gigs that are like open mic where you don't get paid. But that was probably it. I think it was 15 or 20 quid. Mm-hmm. And that was a thrill.
Do you still have the jumper?
No, but it was all right. It actually fitted. It just didn't wash very well. Like,
okay, sure.
Everything looks great until you wash it.
Yeah, so true.
It was in the Liberty. Is there a pub in Francis Street called the Liberty Bell or something like that? And I think it was, I can't remember if it was a fundraiser or not, and it might have been a competition, so I might have won the jumper, or else it was just like, thanks for doing the free gig. We have spare jumpers. I'm not sure, but I definitely got a jumper for doing a gig.
Yeah.
Not to sniff at a jumper. Well, not at the start anyway.
Yeah. So when did you know it was financially feasible then for you? Because you're in this demanding full-time job and then you're doing comedy on the side. So there is that point where you have to kind of make a decision.
Yeah. There was no point. I'm not particularly like famous, so it was never any kind of, sorry for your podcast that I'm not particularly famous, but I was never kind of being like, oh, I'm going to, bye. I'm off now. I'm off now on a world tour. I was just
off to Vegas.
Yeah, it was middle of recession. I was miserable in work, and not because it was a bad job, but just because I lost the faith. You know what I mean? You're like, I can't do this anymore. I don't believe in it, or I didn't need to believe in it, but I don't want to do it. I prefer to be gigging, and I was really tired, and so I just quit. I gave 5 months' notice, and because it was a project that I wanted to help out with, and straight away I really enjoyed the job. Then when I knew I was finishing, but I didn't I didn't know what I would be doing. I just knew I'd be more available. Mm-hmm. So I saved money that I could have a year's money, like year's mortgage and a year's, say, gas and ESB. And so if I have that, then I can. Then I won't be like, okay, here's my 15 quid and a jumper. I'll just put that into the into that pile. But there was plenty of work, but I took a leap of sorts, a calculated risk.
Estimated gamble,
yeah. And then, I didn't turn into like a clown and then run a load of naked billboards. It would have been possible for me to go back to work in some shape or form if it didn't work out. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'd imagine I would just have to think very carefully about what it is I wanted to do. But I could definitely spoof going back into an office.
Yeah.
If the thing hadn't worked out. But as soon as I quit, just your kind of mindset changes. You become more available. You're available during the day. I started a comedy club in Kilmainham, just around the corner from where I live, which is not like, again, it's not for the money. I mean, it's fine. It's once a month, but it's to establish, I suppose, a presence, or be a someone. And that club's been running since 2010, so it's, what's that, 15 years now, except for COVID. So that's In Jokes, and then I run another one for mums and dads with babies called Infant Jokes. So once a month on a Friday morning, there's a gig with basically everyone from somebody who's literally about to give birth to a 3-week-old to maybe a 1-year-old, and the children play down the front, parents sit up the back. We do comedy for the
brilliant.
parents. So that kind of thing. You just start. Hustle it's such a knobby word at times because it's often used as, well, if X, Y, and Z didn't happen, you don't have enough hustle. But it's not that. It's just sometimes you're lucky and whatever. But anyway, you have to fill your time. You have to fill your coffers to pay your bills, and you just become more trying things. And you say yes to everything. Jesus, some of them.
You do a lot though.
Yeah.
So you're a broadcaster. You're a podcaster. You're an author. You run these events. You run comedy clubs.
Yeah. Dublin Story Slam, soldier, fighter, lover.
You love her.
Yeah, dancer.
So do you feel that you have to be like a multi-hyphenate these days?
I think some of it is like there's a bit of magpie brain. There's a bit of liking interesting new things. If an idea occurs to me, maybe would I run this gig or somebody asks me to do a thing that I enjoy, I just sort of accreted them and haven't dropped much. Do you know what I mean? Sure. So they've kind of built up, but you get faster at doing things. Like I used to take a day and a half to write my Irish Examiner column. Now it's a couple of hours.
Sure.
It takes me much less time to promote the 2 gigs I run because there's just kind of systems there. Like the podcast that I started with Aoife Moore, A Few Scoops, as time goes on, we get into a rhythm with that. But obviously there's a limit. You have to kind of drop a few things. But I don't know. I'm sociable enough for an introvert, and that I like when somebody suggests a project to me, I'm like, oh, that'd be fun. You know? And they kind of build up. And then also just stuff ends anyway. Jobs disappear. You get a load of inquiries and then they'll just go away. So you never know what's the correct level of no to say. Because you could be saying no to something that definitely would have happened. So you might as well say yes to everything and hope, a bit like Ryanair, that some passengers don't turn up and the plane will still have a good load ratio or whatever. So I'm sure that's not the right way to do things. I'll be interested in any of your business gurus to tell me the right way to absolutely slay it. But you never know. I don't have advisors. You're kind of, is this the right decision? I don't know. That's a lot of it. I don't have a strategic mentor or anything.
Yeah. But have you ever got financial advice? And is there any advice that
financial advice? Yeah, that's a separate thing. That's like somebody saying, well, you should get a pension, really. That kind of stuff. There's no. I remember for a while. I went over to America a couple of times and did a few gigs in immigrant centres and that. And I remember somebody saying to me, if you're going to America, you need to move there. So if you're not going to move there, don't bother. And that was useful because you got to find out there are certain things that you sort of have to shit or get off the pot, do it properly, go hard or go home kind of thing. And so that's kind of useful because you can be kind of a dilettante in lots of things,
sure,
but they might be a time suck. So it's really just trying to do the things that interest me at the very least, even if I won't always get the outcome right.
Yeah. You've had 7 best-selling books.
Yep.
So tell me about the book industry. That we, from an outsider looking in, we hear about these, big advances and whatnot.
Yeah.
Can it be lucrative?
The first few books were the Irish Mammy books, and that was one of the early social media to book paths. So I'm not typical of the long book slog, but they say that seems like a good idea. Can you make a funny book out of it? I wrote a funny proposal and I wrote 3 good books and I got paid up front. And then, the first one did amazing. They all did well, but the first one was the best. There's always going to be a sort of the best return. The third one was the best written. But anyway, and then I wrote a couple of novels. And the thing about the book industry is, when it comes to shops, you have to understand that there's limited space in the shops.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for lots of products, but people forget that they think, like you would think, well, if I write it and it's good enough, people will just want it, but they don't see it if it's not displayed in the bookshop. And in the bookshop, I'm sure booksellers will tell you about how much is sold off the front of the shop versus the niche. Do you still have Fly Fishing by J.R. whatever, like the niche ones at the back. So that's a great lesson in inventory and stock and product placement.
Yes.
And you have to kind of catch a wave. Some of the books got their chunk of space, some didn't, and you can see the difference. But as in terms of as an exercise, the best thing about it for me is, you have an editor. It's so
Yes.
great. So great having somebody, especially particularly when you're writing humor. Like for me, that's been the best thing about it. Well, as well as a bit of like writing books, a bit like getting a degree in comedy. It doesn't make you any more qualified. It just means, oh, he wrote a book. Yeah, and an excuse to go on and talk about it. But having an editor who says, I don't think that works there. That's too long. That didn't really make me laugh. I'm like, thank you. Somebody to deliver honest, constructive feedback that's not a heckle. And then you just try and make them laugh. And then you find the third draft is so much better. And it happens with jokes, but the joke depends on what audience was there that night. And you get such a shifting baseline of how good a thing was. And it's only over lots of iterations. But I love having somebody to say, yeah, ditch that, it's not working. And I'm like, you're right, actually, I'm relieved you said that. And there'll be times where be like, you fundamentally disagree over what is funny. But if you don't make them laugh and it doesn't have heart, then what's the thing written for? Do you know what I mean? And, every page of a book is a piece of paper that has to be printed. So don't write any shite that, goes in the bin kind of thing. So, that's my favorite thing about it. Lucrative-wise, I did fine. And but I wouldn't advise anyone to quit a job to write a book without having a year's money.
Yeah,
upfront.
that was smart.
Yeah.
A lot of people just leave. They kind of jump and the net will appear. But I think you're bang on.
Well, it's bang on for me. It's bang on for me because I might have lost my nerve. Some people are. I've never had safety nets. Do you know what I mean? I've never been broke. Oh, sorry. I've never had safety nets. I've never been broke because I've always just tried to make sure there was a little bit there. But say when we were growing up, it wasn't like, I'm going to go away to college and my parents will pay for the rent. No, I'm going to hitchhike into college.
Yeah.
And get the 600 quid maintenance grant. That'll be my living expenses plus whatever work I do during the summer. Mm-hmm. This isn't like a four Yorkshireman, but I didn't, apart from a bus fare in secondary school, I didn't get pocket money after, 11 or 12 or whatever. So there was always some bit of, little bit of working or whatever. And then what you needed. But, there wasn't here's your weekly 20 quid for lunch or whatever. I got sandwiches and then...
Yes.
God, cheese sandwiches.
Yeah.
Shudder. But so... Yeah, so the safety net thing, I couldn't do it without it. So the safety net has to be created by me.
Yeah, totally. So you literally wrote the book on Irish mummies, and I'm curious, because we're here to talk about money. How does the Irish mammy, mind the family finances?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as it may seem a strange thing for somebody who wrote a book saying all Irish mammies do this. And then
you're like, I'm not going to stereotype the Irish mammy.
With hindsight, if I was writing those books again 14 years later. Well, I think it depends on their upbringing, but there is definitely a huge, what's the word? Sorry now. What's the word for a large group of people? Oh, yeah, sorry. So there's definitely a huge cohort of women between the ages, say when I was writing the books 15 years ago, between the ages of 50 and 80 who grew up in widespread thrift, not poverty, but nobody had huge money and various levels of whether it was, urban working class, rural working class, small farmer, lower middle class. You have to go up a good bit. You have to go up to Dick Byrne and Glenroe level for when they weren't thrifty.
Yeah.
Because even if you had wages coming in, so many people forged in the time of the 70s and 80s when lots of people were losing their jobs. So you would always be minding the pennies, even if stuff was coming in. So it's not a stretch to say there's a good chunk of people would have been thrifty, I'd say. And yeah, like I think you see it tie in with obsession with not letting heat escape from the house.
Yes.
You know, heating bills.
Yes.
Like not wasting petrol on hobbies. You know, we didn't get many lifts to our passions. Like it's not like we were brought to gymnastics because they saw something in us. It's like,
Yes.
no, I'm not bringing you anywhere because that's a waste of petrol. You know, so there's a bit of that. Not wasting clothing and stuff, and you know, eating food until it's crawling. So I think there's a bit of just strong management of the available resources and a degree of, what do you want a new one for? Isn't the one you have fine? Kind of thing.
Yes.
Within, you know, there's a good chunk of people in that vibe. And then we all got sick of that shit. You know, when the money came.
Yes.
In the 90s, and like when I started college in 96, already there was an expectation I'd get a job at home. Do you know what I mean? Like the sense that you'd have to emigrate was really evaporating then. And so the kind of confidence and idea of how much money was available to anybody who's, well, I'm 47 now, so anybody who's like 40 to 60 now grew up in relative, not even if they didn't have the money, they knew that there was a contract there. If you work hard, you'll do fine. So we probably consume a lot more than our parents did. And I often think when it comes to like, you know, sustainability and all that, the one thing we're overlooking is that a lot of people are like, I'm not going back to the fucking 80s. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want all those hand-me-downs. And they're still slightly triggered by it.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to get people and to think about consumption, you'll have to come at it from a different angle, because they're like, do you know what? You know, you sound like my mother. Like, do you know what I mean? So I think that's sort of in our DNA. But I mean, as I say, I'm thrifty, don't like too much stuff. I embraced.
Yeah.
I embraced the thrift I grew up with. Apart from some stuff that's just like, come on, would you not just get a taxi?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
But do you have any financial regrets, or are you happy with the way you've played it so far?
Well, you find out things, they probably even out. Like, definitely if I'd waited 18 months to buy a house in 2008, I'd have had more money around that time. Or if I'd held on a year before quitting my job, if I'd changed the timing of job changes, I could have gone from miserable wannabe comedian in a job he doesn't like to getting a wedge of redundancy. So I miss, you know, those kind of things.
Sure.
But they're the kind of things that are, you made a decision in good faith.
Yes.
So to regret them is sort of like, you weren't stupid. That's just shit happens.
Yes.
You know, that'd be like saying, you know, should have bought Bitcoin in 2012. And I knew about it in 2012, but, you know, I didn't. And, but that's just like, that's not because you were afraid or a bad person or an idiot or selfish or a dickhead. It's just, sometimes you just miss some things and you get some things. And then there are times where I'm kind of like, I'm really glad I gave that unpromising email the time of day, because that has led on to a thing that I'm currently doing and I'm really happy doing. So I think it balances out. And I always think that not to waste too much time on individual decisions that led to like chunks of finance, as opposed to being happy with things that led to streams
Yes.
of income. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
at lower level. That's for me more sustainable. Now, my wife will say, is that true, Colm? Because you still go on about those things. So tell the nice lady when was the last time you mentioned buying a house at the wrong time. But no, by and large, I've been fine. Like, it would be churlish to be in one of the richest countries in the world, doing jobs that I like or don't hate, and not having immediate financial worries, and then to be spending time regretting it. Like, there's so much bad stuff that people are going through, that for anyone to even listen to somebody for whom things are grand, like, not going to chew up anyone else's emotional capacity, feeling bad for me. So no, I kind of, you just go, and sometimes there are times where it's like, well, okay, that was shit, but that was a vaccine against a worse decision I could have made if things had gone a different way. You know the way sometimes you make a balls of something, but it's in like a small area, and you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But if I had got that right, I might have sailed merrily into a larger iceberg, without learning a lesson
100%.
further on.
And I think as well, you have to look at the other resources that you have, which are time and energy.
Yeah.
And, you can't squander them either, So maybe you didn't make the best money decision.
Yeah.
But, you made a good decision for your energy at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Are the people who were with me in my life at that point, you know? And I think it's all fine. As I say, things are grand to be mithering over past mishaps is ungrateful.
Yeah. Do you have a pension? You mentioned there something about it.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah. We got I was getting the sense that I wasn't really knowing how. Maybe late 30s. Yeah. Kind of going, like, some of it is the drip feed of those ads for pensions, where it's like, have you got a pension? And it sounds like me in the ad. No, I do voiceover, so it could have been me.
Yeah.
But and then the notion that I'm a saver anyway. But, like, putting money in a bank is like putting under the mattress. It's like putting under the mattress, and then some of the notes get eaten by mice.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine I remember contacting her because she's just, like, good at this kind of stuff. Susan Hayes, actually. You should have her on. I think she's on News Talk these days. I was like, because she's from the same village as me. I was like, you're really good at telling people about just getting started with this stuff. Can you give me, where would I start? And then so she just said, well, these people are sound, and that's all you need when it starts. It doesn't really matter how much money you put in or whatever. You just need somebody who's, like, I don't know, good country stock that says, are you a country person lost in the big city and susceptible to having to being taken for a ride by shiny suited city slickers? Yeah. Here's to other country people who know what's what, and they'll see you right. And just see, it's so hard when you're self-employed to buy help.
That's why I'm asking. It's not like, because I don't like that pension question, because it can get people's oxters up, But I'm asking because people in the creative industries who are self-employed, it's quite uncommon. It's quite common for them not to have a pension.
Well, leave the pension aside, but I think you should pay for advice, or you can get free advice from banks. But I think it's money well spent if you say, I'm going to put a couple of £100 aside to buy a few hours of somebody's time to give me advice. Now, everybody's got something to sell, so they might say, if you come with me I'll take you on a journey. But it's really hard it's a really hard habit to get into, to buy services when you're self-employed. Because especially as you're a comedian going, you want to see the bullshit I charge for. No way I'm paying you any of that nonsense. But it's once you do, it does pay off, I think. Because if nothing else, it's just another voice in the room. And they'll just expose some ridiculous homespun notion you had yourself. Because you're king of the castle when you're self-employed. You think, well, I handle this, and this. I'm a lone gunslinger walking the high plains like Clint Eastwood in High Plains Drifter. Like, nobody can tell me nothing. I leave no baggage behind to shake the dust off my feet. Yeah. And, like, I'm not going to pay you for advice. And then they'll go, you don't need to walk the high plains because it's like there's a train going there, and it's like it's €1. So it's that somebody to kind of just point out your pet theories are bullshit. And it's no harm. Really is no harm. Like if I take it from an editor about my pet jokes, you sometimes need a financial editor to tell you your thoughts are nonsense, right? You've got good instincts, but that thing, you got to stop buying 2-for-1s because you throw out half of it, or the equivalent of that. And buying advice is a good idea.
And finally, Colm, where would you like to be in 5 years' time financially? Do you have those kind of goals in place?
No, well, do you know, I don't think about it in terms of where I'd like to be, but you do get to the stage of who is going to be hiring me in 5 years' time. Like you get, I remember at that scary thing in, I went to talk to somebody who'd given me work before, and I said, hey, you do stuff where you're like working with business and stuff. Thanks for the gig you gave me. Could I get like an hour of your time for free? Just to get some advice. And the thing he said was, do you know who's going to be hiring you when you're 60? And I'd never thought of that. And this was before COVID. Like COVID literally happened the following month. So straight away, one of the catastrophes that I always look forward to had actually happened. The ones I imagine.
Yeah.
The 15 a day. But that was a scary thing because when you're, what age was I then? 42. I hadn't even thought about the idea about what happens in 10 years' time or 15 years' time about who hires you. Like if you're in a job, unless you get laid off, you go, well, it's the people who are hiring me now. And if I leave, it'll be on my own terms and all that kind of thing. But the idea that I'm going to, who will I know then? Who will have retired that's already hiring me? Like if the people who hire me are all 10 or 15 years older than me.
Yeah.
So mainly, I see myself, basically, where do I see myself in 5 years' time that people still want to give me work? Whether it's the same people or a new chunk of people, be it want to buy tickets to come see me, want to listen to the podcast I'm working on, want to hire me to MC their company communications day, which I often do. That they still see me as funny, relevant,
Yes,
and good crack, and have a knowledgeable. So that's the 5-year thing, not necessarily what I'll have, but what can I do?
Well, I truly don't think you've anything to worry about in that regard.
Thanit very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll note that. Yeah.
You can put that in your book.
I'll ring you up in 5 years' time and say, can you put me on that podcast again? Because things have dropped off a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting to you, Colm. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you.